as I told you in the last video, not all tools have direct integrations with Notion. And that's where third-party automation tools like Zapier come in. They are basically tools that help you to connect different pieces of software together by basically being like the middleman that is the glue between the different softwares. And you can use it to create nice and simple automations. So that's what we'll do in this video. The automation we're going to build is going to allow us to create recurring tasks in Notion databases. And that's something that was historically very hard to do, actually, because Notion doesn't have a native feature of, tasks that repeat each other in a monthly or weekly schedule. And so now with the Notion API, which is like the programming interface for other tools so that they can interact with Notion, since this was launched, doing this with tools like Zapier and Notion is really easy. So let me show you how to do it. To do this, we again have a really simple database that I set up for you, which is just, it just has a name, a date, and a done column, and it's for recurring tasks. So again, let's say we want to have some recurring tasks like this weekly goal review. And a common use case in Notion is to basically add a filter for these to-dos to basically only show the ones that are unchecked. So whenever you basically check off a task, that it's gone. So this is a common behavior in to-do applications. But now what do we do if we want to have this task come back on a regular basis? Well, it's not quite that easy inside of Notion. Now that's where Zapier comes in. It's a really powerful tool to create these kinds of automations that do stuff like that. So to do something on a regular basis. And we're also going to use it for the recurring tasks. And Zapier obviously is a different software tool. It's a new software tool. So you would have to sign up for that if you want to use it. Again, it's highly recommended in my opinion to learn it because you can really do a lot of stuff using Zapier. So I really recommend using it. And it's also not that hard to get started. So once you have a Zapier account, you can create an automation by creating a so-called Zap. And that's basically what a Zapier automation is called. Now you will get to this editor, and this is basically what you always see when creating automations with Zapier. The first thing that always happens is a trigger, and the trigger is basically what triggers the automation. So this could be, somebody submitting a form in Typeform. This could be you creating a new page in your Notion workspace. This could be you getting a new email. This could be basically anything else. So Zapier integrates with thousands of different software tools and allows you to use all of them as basically triggers for automations that you want to build. If you want to get a more in-depth view into Zapier, then I recommend my Zapier 101 course, which basically covers all of the Zapier fundamentals on a much broader scale and goes into much more detail because we have more time than we have in this course. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can check that out. But for now, let's just get started with what we have. And so how do we now create these recurring tasks? Well, Zapier has a nice built-in tool called Schedule by Zapier. And this basically allows us to use a certain time interval as a trigger for an automation. And you can see that on the right side over here, the schedule option. And in here, we can now choose a trigger event. So we can choose when do we want this to trigger an automation. And we have these different options here. So we have every day, every hour, every month, every week. And in our case, since we want to use that for our weekly goals review, we'll choose the every week trigger. And then you can actually just click on continue. And now we have to set up this trigger. So we have to tell it, well, on which day of the week do we want this trigger to trigger? And also at what time of the day. So first of all, let's choose the day of the week. And let's say we want to do this every Sunday. So every Sunday we want to do our goals review. And for the time of the day, we'll just go with something like 5 p.m. maybe. And now we can click on continue. And now we just test the trigger. That's something you usually do with Zapier automations. Don't worry about that for now. You can just do it and then continue. And now we come to the interesting part. So now we basically have a trigger that triggers every week. And now we want to do something with that. And what we want to do is to create a new task in our Notion database. Now, how do we do that? Well, we search for Notion here. So we now want to do something inside of Notion. And that's the power of automation tools like Zapier, because they allow you again to connect all these different types of tools together and to trigger certain actions in any piece of software, basically, depending on something else that is happening. And if you've never set up Notion in Zapier before, then you will have to log into your account here as well. Now let's choose the action event. And so that's basically what we want to do inside of Notion. And in our case, we want to create a database item, because remember, in our database, we basically want to create a new database row every week to generate this recurring task every week inside of Notion. So back to Zapier, let's choose this action event, and then let's click on continue again. Now you will have to choose your Notion account, and if you haven't connected Zapier to Notion before, you'll have to basically authorize Zapier to access your Notion account in order for the automations to work. Now in here, I'm going to choose this account, which is the one I'm using for this tutorial, and then we can click on continue again. Now I have to choose the database I actually want to add this task to. So Zapier obviously has to know where to add the task that we want to add. We said we want to create a database item, but we haven't told it which database we want to add that to yet. So this is what we do here. And we just look for the database that we want. In my case, it's going to be a recurring task. So that's basically the recurring task database that I set up. And you might also have to basically give the Zapier automation access to that Notion database. So if I go back to my Notion account and go into the share options here on this database, you'll see that I have shared this with Zapier. So Zapier now has access to this database, and the sharing therefore kind of works the same as it would work for sharing content with other people or with user groups in Notion. So please keep in mind that you should have that set up in order for this automation to work. Yeah, now back to the Zapier automation. So we're basically almost done. We just have to tell it which data we basically want to add in here. So for the name, we'll actually go with weekly goals review. And then for the done column, that's basically this one over here, right? That should be just false for now, because we obviously want to check these tasks off later. They will be unchecked by default. So yeah, that's true. And then the content we can just leave out for now. So that should already be it. If I click on continue, we can actually test this out to see how it works. So let's click on test and continue. And when we do that, we should actually see a new entry being added to our Notion database. So let's check. So it's working on that. And let's see if it actually finishes. Takes some time. And now it tells us a database item was sent to Notion about 1 second ago. So it seems to work. Let's go back. And indeed, we see this new item being added in here. And with that, we're finished with this automation. It can be as simple as that, but still, I hope that this video wasn't too much at once. I understand that it can be, again, really challenging to wrap your head around how these automation tools work, but I promise you that it's worth it to learn them, because it's going to help you out so much in automating your own work and the things that you don't want to do. And also it's a super valuable skill to have. So I definitely encourage you to learn more about it, because especially with Notion, it's an incredibly powerful tool to have in your tool belt, basically. Now in the next video, we'll take a look at how we can enhance our CRM using automation.